ready.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Rilla here, and today we are bringing you an update on our Infinimist Necro build that we have come up with that took us from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4 at the amazing level of like level 53, 54. I've done a lot of upgrades since then, since we're in Torment in World Tier 4, and I noticed in the last video, maybe like, I don't know if you guys noticed or not from the patch or not, but anything 10 levels over your level is just flexing at this point, because you no longer get extra XP. They capped it at once something is 10 levels higher than your level, then that's all the XP you're going to get, times 10. So the content I was showing, everything I was fighting in that content was around 10 to 11 levels higher than me. So in this content we're going to be showing, because we're going to do this layout of this video a little bit different, because this video is mostly going to focus on our aspects and why we chose them, and focus on our Paragon board, since we've gotten a lot more progress in our Paragon board. So in this video, in the gameplays you're going to see, we're actually doing level 90 plus content at level 77. So we're doing 13 levels, and occasionally sometimes 14 to 15 levels higher than where we currently are, even though there's no real reason to do it, pretty easily. The only downside I see so far with this build is boss damage is a little tricky, but not because we don't have the damage, because the corpse generation with automatically triggering corpses causes a counter effect of where you're accidentally casting corpse tendrils on corpses that you need to actually cast corpse explosions on the boss to do more damage, which we'll dive into that when we go into the build. So first, let's start off with a quick overview of the skills. The skills are pretty much the exact same with some minor changes from where we were last time in the first video. If you haven't seen the first video, I'll try to remember to put a card up in editing so you guys can click the card to check out the first video and see the skill tree with the link to the build as well. But anyway, let's just dive into the skills. So we start off with 2 in our first section. We go with Reap into Enhanced Reap, just because we need something to get out of here. Reap's also good because if you want to use Acolyte's Reap, you can get a corpse, which that really comes in handy for bossing, because sometimes your biggest struggle with a boss is getting a corpse that you can do what you want to do with it and not allow your heart to blow it up for you. Next, we dive down. We've been using Silver because we had the boost for it, but also because why not? And then we went into Enhanced Silver because we had the boost and just having that extra damage to do with your essence, since your essence is just sitting there not doing anything, because this build doesn't use any essence at all. Pretty useless, but we did this kind of towards the end. But if you're in the beginning, what you want to do first is just put all 3 points in the hued flesh. We had a comment on the first video that said something about we were wasting points in using the carapace, the fortify, for consuming corpses or using corpses or generating corpses. What hued flesh does, pretty much in his description, every time we do damage, thanks to lucky hit, we can get a corpse, so we're generating corpses, which then means we are getting our fortify, getting our carapace, becoming tankier. I tested this out. I went through entire dungeons without using Reap last night on our Twitch stream. Check me out, twitch.tv/gorillaphent. We did not use Reap a single time in dungeons, and we still were able to get full life fortify, and I'm pretty sure it's because of hued flesh. Moving down, obviously this is an Infinimist, so we have to put 5 stacks in the blood mist. A lot of our extra points are coming from our items, as you can clearly see, and our big damage and the damage dealer of this is not blood mist. Blood mist is just the carry in the vehicle, but the actual, if anything, blood mist is the driver, this is the car. Corpse explosion is where we get all of our damage from. Our corpse explosion still doing around 11,000 damage. Then we enhance it, and then we also make it a darkness, which then makes it into close to a 10,000 damage dealing puddle just for existing, and they stand in it for 6 seconds. Also, when we get blood mist, we go into enhanced blood mist. That does a little overpower thing, not really that important, but what is important is ghastly blood mist, which drops the corpses that we need to make stuff go boom, boom, pow. Like I said, we don't really use essence at all, but we have to get Grim Harvest to go down to Fueled by Death. Fueled by Death is up constantly because all we do is consume corpses nonstop. Every moment of this build, you are consuming a corpse, so this 9% damage is constantly up. Then we go down to here. The first skill you get down to here is not any of the damage things. It's actually Decrepify. They have a new heart that's out there we'll cover later into the build. We have this on at all times. Now I have the Decrepit heart where I thought it was busted at first, but then I realized 0 is the same thing as 1. We have the heart where our Decrepify is up when we have 0 enemies around us. That is the equivalent to 1. Because it doesn't do anything if no one is around us. It does the same thing when no one's around as if 1 is around, which is debuff. So it's a level 5 heart. I guess that's cool, but I thought it was like crazy. But then I really thought about like 1 and 0 are the exact same because, you know, if you needed 2, if you were bossing, that's bad. But if you needed 1 in your bossing, that's good. If you need 0 in your bossing, it's the same as 1. Anyway, so we're going to the Decrepify. This slows and makes our enemies deal less damage to us, so that's really important. Then we enhance our Decrepify. So now whenever we get a lucky hit while someone's influenced by the Decrepify, they get stunned. Then we go into Abhorred Decrepify. This helps our cooldown on our Blood Mist, on our Corpse Explosion, on our Corpse Tendrils, on our Bone Storm. So that's the tree we go here. Then we also dive into Cursed Enemies, because now this is up 24/7, similar to Fueled by Death when consuming corpses. This is up because everything that comes near us will automatically be cursed, and we'll do an extra 12%. And then we also go into Death's Embrace. Close enemies take 6% more damage, and they deal us 9% less damage. All those are important, making us tanky, making us strong. Now, some people were confused. I only have 1 point in Corpse Tendrils. The extra points in Corpse Tendrils are coming from the same thing that's giving us extra points up here. So I can't take it off and put it only on Corpse Explosion. It's for corpse things. Corpse Tendrils has corpse in it, so it's getting an extra 3 points. Don't blame me, blame the game. Anyway, we put 1 in the Corpse Tendrils that grabs. The range is pretty good. It pulls, and then it makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. I noticed a big thing last night when we were streaming on Twitch. I actually only had at the time 20% vulnerability damage. I have been so unlucky with my rings that I never get vulnerable damage on any of my rings. I do have this sword because it's 17% vulnerable damage. That is the only vulnerable damage I have in the build, and it drives me crazy because that is tons of damage that we are missing. This build is nowhere near optimized. If we could just find a ring with a little crit damage, with a little vulnerable damage, we would be in business, but it's not here nor there. Then we dive into the meat and potatoes, which are all our shadow skills. We want all of these. Reaper's Pursuit makes us a little bit faster. Boom. Stacking damage, stack up to 3 times. And whenever you deal damage with darkness skills, they take 6% increased shadow damage from you and your minions. Minions don't matter. Terror, we have an extra point in terror thanks to our amulet. Darkness skills deal a bonus 12% damage for enemies who are slowed. They're slowed 24/7. 12% damage to enemies who are stunned or immobilized. We do get stuns off from time to time just by using shadow skills because of crippling darkness, and then every once in a while with Corpse Tendrils as well. I believe that can stun. No, or is it no? Sorry, Decrepify. I think they get Decrepified and then Corpse Tendrils hits them and they're stunned. So we have 2 ways to possibly generate stun. And then, like I said, we go into the Carapace just for the Fortified to make us a little bit more tankier, because no one likes getting one shot from an arrow off the screen that you can't see. We've all fall victim to that. It is awful. Next, for survivability sake, since we're talking about Carapace, we go into standalone, so we sacrifice all the minions. I'll cover the book of the day here in a moment. We go into Memento Mori, because we're making our sacrifices of not having minions 60% better. Then we go into Bone Storm. Bone Storm is another thing that we get a lot of cooldown reduced on because of Decrepifying and Blood Misting and blowing stuff up and Lucky Hit Chance, so we can get cooldown reductions on Bone Storm as well, so we can have that up, not all the time, but very frequently, as you see in the gameplay rolling as we're talking about this. Then we get the damage reduction, that's 15% off. And then we get Supreme Bone Storm, which boosts our crit chance by 20%. So I made a mistake when I was saying that the dots were critting. The crits that you see on the screen a lot of times are corpse explosions going off, and that's what's critting, because dots can't crit. My fault for saying dots can, but a lot of the big crit numbers that you'll see will be corpse explosions, either corpses being made and blowing up as soon as they're made, or some of that nature. And I noticed a lot in some of the changes I made to build, I was getting a lot of 6-digit dots as like flat 192, 101s, 162s, just flat out dot gray letter damage. So I was like, ooh, we're cooking. And then lastly, and most importantly, our passive, which we're going to dive into a lot of times, which is why we have certain things that we do have. Shadow Blight. Shadow damage affects enemies with Shadow Blight for 2 seconds. You and your minions deal 10% bonus damage to enemies with Shadow Blight. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you, your minions, while they are affected by Shadow Blight, they take additional damage. So we won't, the reason the dots work is because we're always diving into Shadow Blight. We want as many things causing extra damage as possible to dive into Shadow Blight. So pretty much every 10 hits this happens. So if something takes 20 hits, that means it happens twice. Also, this damage also gets hit by other multipliers that we're also diving into in our build in our Paragon board for shadow damage. So this is just a base number, and this base number can be multiplied by all the other things we have going on. All right, before we get into the aspects, let's get into the Book of the Dead. So we're going with skirmishers. We're sacrificing them for an extra 5% crit chance, which is you get an extra 60% because yeah, the thingy. Then for mages, we're going code. We're gonna you do an extra 15% damage to vulnerable enemies, but you can no longer risk other mages. Cool. But like I said, we really have to find some better rings with vulnerable damage because we are leaving a lot of meat on that bone, and it makes me sad when I think about it. And lastly, we're doing iron. We do an extra 30% critical strike damage, and we can't summon the golem, which is fine. Our crit damage just off of those, just sitting around regular, 175. That is huge. Yes, our crit chance is only around 27, but when you have Bone Storm running, I busted a little bit, and we have some other things as well. So now let's go into the aspects. I did see someone say, oh, you're missing a lot of damage because you're not running a two-handed weapon. Well, the reason I'm not running a two-handed weapon is because there are so many aspects on this build that you want, and you don't really know which ones you want to drop. Another reason is I don't know what aspect, like I had talked earlier in the video, because we were thinking about going in Iron Maiden. I had talked about dropping the Blood Mist Trail, but the Blood Mist Trail is so good. The reason it's so good is because it puts down a pool that ticks for 4 seconds. Our goal is to get 10 hits as many times as possible. This helps us with that. So I can't drop that. I was thinking about dropping this, but once again, our goal is to make anything that does shadow get 10 hits as much as possible. When Bone Storm is going, it is now a shadow ability. So now it dives into our key passive. It dives into Shadow Blight. So I can't drop that, because once again, we want to get as many 10 hit possible things to happen to get that trigger off the free damage on top of all the other damage. So I don't know what to do. Corpse Tendril. Corpse Tendril gives us crit chance. We get an 18% crit chance for 6 seconds when Corpse Tendril happens. Corpse Tendril is constantly happening in this build. So I was informed from watching another content creator that there's a priority to the Corpse Tendrils on the ground when you're using the heart that makes your Corpse Tendrils magically explode. It goes summon the corpse first. If you don't have summoners, it goes Corpse Tendril second. 3 seconds later, it goes Corpse Explosion. And then 3 seconds later, it rotates back around to the front. So for us, we only have 2. So first it will go Corpse Tendrils. Second, it will go Corpse Explosion. Then it goes again back to Corpse Tendril. So pretty much we have an extra 18% crit chance constantly going, tied in with 36% crit damage. So I can't drop Corpse Explosion. Our shadow damage, I can't drop shadow damage. We deal 170% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive procs. After the Shadow Blight key passive procs damaging enemies 10 times. Well, we're constantly getting this. So this 170, we can't just take that off. That's like a key cornerstone of the build. Then we go into each time a Shadow Blight passive deals damage to the enemy, it increases the next Shadow Blight damage within 10 seconds, 40%. This is going to always be happening, and it stacks 5 times. This is 200%. I can't drop that. So there's no way I can see what I could possibly drop to run a two-handed weapon. Sadly, the problem with this build is all of your affixes are axes, which means they can only go in a two-handed weapon place 4 places. In an offhand weapon, 5 places. Like that's all we got. Like all of our good stuff is axes. Now, of course, we have to run this being out from below. So we have to keep that going. And this is just for the movement speed, because due to the fact we're tapping in certain malignant hearts, this shield counts as a CC, so we want to tap in that. Speaking of which, let's cover our malignant hearts real quick. So we're still running the same ones. The Wrathful Heart, was it was it Suffering or something? No, Creeping Death, that's what it is. Your damage over time effects are increased by 41% for each crowd control effect you have. Currently we do stun, we do slow, and we do chill. So we have those three things going off simultaneously. So this is up, and they do more damage. And whenever unstoppable and staggered bosses, and whenever a monster becomes unstoppable, which they normally do because they get kind of pulled with 2 corpse centrals, that swaps off and we just get a flat 131% increased damage from all our dots. So our dots do more damage once they become unstoppable, or if it's a boss and we stagger them. Our other heart is our brutal heart, which is the decrepify heart. When at least 0 enemies are near you, gain an aura. It curses surrounding enemies with decrepify for 21 seconds. 0 is the same as 1, so no biggie here. It is level 5, which is cool. So I think the top end of how long it lasts goes up, because that was 25. I can't remember what it is at level 4. So that's kind of cool. And then we have our vicious heart. Walking near a corpse automatically activates an equipped core skill every second. That's kind of crazy. Dealing 22% reduced damage. So our course explosion a lot of times when they're going off are doing less damage, but I think our dots remain the same. I don't necessarily think our dots do less damage until like I'm told otherwise. I don't think our dots will stay the same, but the aspects are the same. Our blood mist triggers corpse explosions. This is really good, and it reduces all our cooldowns by 0.5 for each course that we detonate. It's really strong. Disobedience, self-explanatory, even nerf, still really good. As I said, this is a staple. Hollow from below. We're still looking for, I think it's Black Riven here. I want to get that a try, but we haven't found it yet. Just very unlucky. I guess I got all my luck on the front end. Also, still haven't found a better chest. Still running on a sacred chest. Feels bad, man. Been in World Tier 4 for a while now, so it's kind of crazy. All right, then we run our barrier for more survivability. That's our Bone Storm, because it's 5% of our HP. We do need to get our HP up, it's a little lacking. We are running these boots, Dependent Greaves, just because the movement speed, Necro is a pretty slow class. So having this extra movement speed is good, and it adds chilled, which is another CC. So having enemies, running through a crowd of enemies while you're blood missing, chilling them, slowing them from decrepify, and then corpse tendrils pulling them and then potentially getting stunned, take even more damage, is a pretty good setup. As I said before, this is a staple. Each time our Shadow Blight keep passive, deals damage to the enemy, increase our next Shadow Blight for 10 seconds, about 40%. So that's how, if you get a big enough mob of enemies and you get a lot going, a big mob, you start seeing crazy numbers, because the longer they're in it, the more things are proccing, the more multipliers you're getting added onto the base damage. Like I said, we also have the key passive here, does 170 extra damage, 170% extra damage. As much as I would like to put this on a 2-handed weapon and double it, I just don't see how. I just don't see what aspect I could give up to get a 2-handed weapon on it. I've got a couple nice 2-handed weapons lying around. I don't have as many of these aspects lying around to test, but we could try it one day. I'm kind of on the fence with my Wrathful Heart, because I do want to try Barber, because I've heard good things. I do want to try Great Feast. I have both of those hearts lying around, but I don't have a necklace as good as this necklace to compensate. And as you clearly see, my gear in certain areas is kind of crap. We got 4 extra skills, and decrepify doesn't really matter, but we got it. This is just tanky. Our legs, we got 4 in blood mist, 4 in corpse explosion. As you see, when we have the +7 from equipment, our sword, our weapon's kind of trash because it doesn't have vulnerable damage on it, only crit damage. This we got +3 to macabre and corpse skills, so that's our +7, and we got the terror, which is pretty awesome, and the 20% movement speed is really good. Our ring, that's what leaves our trail behind, which, as I said, adds to another dot to help us hit the 10 Shadow Blight stacks to get our passive to trigger. No vulnerable damage on the sadly, just crit chance. So this is kind of base ring. We just recently upgraded from sacred rings to ancestral rings. So that's probably where all my vulnerability damage went. They're probably on the ancestral rings, honestly. I have to go back and look. In this ring, our Bone Storm becomes a shadow skill. Once again, no vulnerable damage on, only crit chance, and just some other aspects that are there as well that go into the build. Stun damage, shadow damage, dot damage. And our offhand, finally, still don't have a really good offhand. We got more crit chance for injured enemies, a little cooldown, which cooldown only really applies to Bone Storm, Bone Mist, because we don't really cast corpse tendrils too often. The corpse explosion is always up. And on this one, we have extra crit chance and crit damage. So let's go into the really awesomely good part, which is the Paragon board that we have been working on. If you watched the last video, we only had 2, I believe. Now we're up to 4 Paragon boards. A little bit has changed, not too much. We still start off with control. I've seen a lot of other builds where they put territorial here because they have a better place to put control. Until I get to that point, I don't really need that tankiness. As you can clearly see in the gameplay that we're doing level 95, 93 plus stuff pretty easily. So we just start with control. Then we go up into the wither board. Gotta pick up wither. Wither's insane. Your shadow damage over time. Shadow damage overtime effects have a 5% chance to deal 50% multiplicative, 50% X bonus damage each time they deal damage. This chance is increased by 1% and the bonus damage is increased by 2.5 for each willpower you have. So that's where the numbers start getting really big because of that multiplier when wither. So as I said, the more health something has, the longer it stays alive, the more damage it will take in turn. Then we grab Dragon Shadows. Damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage. That's pretty awesome. We haven't picked up the bonus yet. We're just kind of chilling. Then we got Lingering Shadows. That's just more dot damage from shadows over time and more shadow damage itself. Then we go up here. We grab our glyph slot. Well, I think I grabbed this first. Malediction. We grab that first for more shadow damage and intelligence. Then we go up here to our glyph slot. We put darkness in here for, you guess it, more darkness damage, shadow damage, and you get that willpower up as soon as possible to get more damage. I mean, to have whenever you deal shadow damage to an enemy, that enemy deals less damage to you. Then we move over to, what's that, Groaning Darkness? I think, yeah, Groaning Darkness has more dot damage and more damage to elites. We're a little deck short on there, but I mean, we'll have it in no time, I'm confident. All right, then we go out to the right here and we go to the Flesh Eater board. I think pretty much on the last video, that's kind of where we ended it. I don't think I had this board unlocked. Since getting this board unlocked, holy moly, bro. Anyway, consuming 5 courses grants you 40% increased damage for 6 seconds. This is up non-stop because consuming 5 corpses is just normal. The only time you don't consume 5 corpses if it's a 1v1 and your lucky hit chance just doesn't do anything. Like your reap doesn't do anything and your silver doesn't do anything. You just don't get a corpse. But once you get a corpse rolling, that corpse has a lucky hit chance on itself. Combined with your lucky hit chance, the odds you getting another corpse go pretty high. So this can trigger pretty quickly, pretty often. So this 40% damage can be up at all times. Not all times in a boss scenario, but in a mobbing scenario, this 40% up is, I don't think the mob will last 6 seconds. That much is for sure. So we go out after we get Flesh Eater, we go down, get our socket. We have Scourge over here. We're leveling the Scourge now. We gotta get some willpower to get that going. For every 5 willpower purchase within range, you do more shadow dot damage over time. You deal 10% increased damage to your enemies affected by shadow damage over time effects. So we need to get that going. So we gotta get some willpower here. Once we get that going, we pick this node, we go straight up out. There are some other nodes here, but mostly they're defensive and we're not really interested in defense because offense wins championships. I know what the saying is defense wins championships, offense sells tickets, but we're not buying into that today. And next we go into the Scent of Death board. I can't wait to get here. We're super close. I'm actually doing my renounce because I want to get here that much sooner. Scent of Death, when at least two corpses nearby, you gain 15% damage reduction. Woohoo, damage reduction, I'm not gonna die. When no corpses nearby, you deal 15% more damage. Now, I'm thinking nearby is the same equivalent as close enemies and distance enemies. Close enemies are melee range. Distance enemies are anyone outside of melee range. So what I'm thinking is as long as we're outside of melee range, there are no corpses nearby. And that means we do an extra 15% damage, 15% X damage on top of everything else that we have going. So I'm really excited for this board. Can't wait to get over here to it. But before we pick it up, we get another 25% damaging its healthy enemies and 15% crit strike damage. So that's why our crit strike damage is so high. So yeah, so this is the updated build. This is what has, as you see in the gameplay, I mean, really just been cooking them up. Like I have no complaints. You know, the death happens every once in a while because it's Diablo. Thankfully this isn't hardcore, and I've really just been enjoying it. I mean, this build is ready and pieced up to do any piece of content. It's still not all ancestral out yet. I still have a sacred chest piece, and I don't feel too squishy. These legs you can do whatever you want with. There's not set. We have these legs, and then we also have these silver legs, which I might put back on just because the key is to tap into the shadow blight passive as much as possible. And I feel, even though I like this for the movement speed, I feel like since I'm using silver, the other legs making silver leave a trail that does do dot damage will be more beneficial to what we're trying to do, because every time we can get 10 hits off of a shadow damage, we get extra shadow damage, which has all these other multipliers to it. So I don't know, we'll see. Just more testing is required. Thank you guys for checking this video out. I'm going to be working on a different Necro video. We're going to be working on a Necro minion video here pretty soon in the coming week. And then probably after that, I might dive into trying to get some sorcerer stuff going, whether it be firewall sorcerer, whether it be blizzard spike sorcerer, just see what sorcerer has to do with this new season and new heart system. Also, we're going to try different. I'm just going to bite the bullet. We're going to try out a barber heart, and we're going to try out a great feast heart to see of those three, which one reigns supreme. So yeah. So I'm looking forward to bringing you guys that content. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for checking it out. And until next time, peace.